So some good news. Durban's port is getting back to business. Operations were halted last week due to the devastating floods. Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan, who visited today, says terminals are functioning at between 60 to 100% capacity. We know, of course, that an alternative route is giving trucks access to the port. That's after Bay Head Road was washed away last week. Gavin Kelly, CEO of the Road Freight Association, joins me now. Gavin, thank you so much for your time. We know that the backlog was bad. How bad is it currently?
Good evening, Sally, and good evening to all your listeners. Well, you've seen some of the visuals of what the port looks like right now. And you can imagine what it looked like a couple of days ago. At one stage, there was nothing moving in and out of the port. We've been able to get fuel and essential foods and medicines moving through the port. And we've been working on those access roads. So Bay Road is allowing some trucks to move through, which is obviously the #1 route into the port. And then we've got the residents of the Bluff area who have agreed to allow vehicles to move through there, which we're very grateful for, which means we can move those essentials out. But even though we've been trying everything and we've been trying to repair roads, when I say we, I mean that's the whole community down at the port, all the local authorities, etc., we aren't at 100% yet. We're probably sitting around the 60% mark. There are some terminals that are operating 100%, but what we normally put through the port on a daily basis, going in and out, imports and exports, we're not there yet. And as you can see some of the visuals now, there are some of the yards where the containers are still being cleared. They've fallen down, so they need to be cleared there. And then, of course, we have to assess what the damage really is underground. We can't see that. So there are some areas that are still no-go areas, but it's much better than it was yesterday or the day before.
Talk to me about how goods are being prioritized. You mentioned essentials, but what's getting through first and what is likely to be delayed? And that's coming into the country and going out, I would imagine, via the port?
Yes, well, there's a fair spread of goods that come through the port of Durban. It's the largest containerized port in the country. It does the greatest volumes. So we have, for example, the prioritized cargoes that are going through right now, fuel. We need that to get into the country, not only in the KZN area, and there are a number of stations and a number of links in KZN that we have to go rather longer around than what we normally would have used. So fuel is the first one. Foodstuffs, we import food, perishables on the one hand, and we export a lot of perishables, and you can't just stack that somewhere and hope that 2 or 3 weeks later it's still going to be either edible or in a good state. So that needs to go in and out. And then there's anything of a medicine type of value or any sort of stuff you'd use in terms of healthcare. So that's prioritized right at the moment. Then of course there's a whole lot of ores that go through there. There's machinery, the electronic goods that come and go, up to our neighbours, of course, as well. And there are things like tyres. Now, those at the moment are all on the back burner, not that we don't want to move them, but we've got to get those essentials through first.
Yeah. And, the President yesterday said that he was declaring a national state of disaster because the flooding in KwaZulu-Natal is going to affect all of us. You've explained how crucial the Port of Durban is, but just give me a bit more of an understanding of how it could affect the whole country.
Well, one of the things to think about, Sally, is where Durban is situated in South Africa. It's on the eastern coast of South Africa. And the bulk of everything that comes from the east, from the China, from the Australias, from the Singapores, all of those industries and those exporters on that side of the world generally send everything to Durban. So you've got Richards Bay and you've got Durban, but Durban taking the bulk of the general freight, and then of course all the fuel. So just about anything that would come from that side of the world, and there are exceptions obviously, but just about anything that comes from that side of the world lands at Durban, is then cleared through the port of Durban, and then is destined for all over the country. So it isn't going just up to Johannesburg. There is a fair amount of freight that does actually go down to Cape Town. And it is similar for Cape Town. Cape Town will accept most of the European from Europe and from the Americas. So it's really where Durban is situated in terms of the country, and that being the first port of entry, for want of a better word, it from there distributes across the country. And that's why when the port was damaged in the floods, that the rest of the country felt the delays in terms of the goods through the port.
You've explained that food, fuel and essential medicines are obviously going to be prioritised, but should we across the country prepare for possible delays of items? I'm thinking, for example, of a car that you might be waiting for delivery on, or waiting for a shipping container with your household goods to leave the country. Are we likely to experience delays in the weeks to come on these less essential goods?
Well, if I said no, I'd be lying up front, wouldn't I? Because there are already delays. The best thing to do is, if you have a box, as we call it, or a container that is destined to come through the port of Durban, is to get hold of your freight forwarder or your importer, or even your exporter if you're sending out, to find out what sort of delays there are. There are going to be, in terms of some of those non-essentials, probably going to be delays of at least 7 to 14 days. At the rate in which we're improving, at the rate in which we're getting those routes sorted out, it shouldn't be longer than that. But there are going to be delays.
All right. Thank you so much for that update. Really appreciate it. Gavin Kelly, CEO of the Road Freight Association.